Can you still hear the crackle of a vinyl record spinning, or catch a whiff of fresh-cut grass from a summer afternoon spent with friends under the open sky? The 1960s weren't just a decade, they were a vibrant explosion of change, color, and possibility. America buzzed with hope and transformation, from the echoing cheers at a civil rights rally to the quiet awe as astronauts first set foot on the moon. Families crowded around the TV to witness history unfold, their lives shaped by the Beatles, bell-bottom pants, and the adrenaline rush of new cars rolling off the lot. Each day seemed to promise a new discovery, and even the ordinary, like a meal at the local drive-in or a letter arriving in the mailbox, carried its own magic. Do you sometimes wonder what made those days so unforgettable, and how your world was shaped by marches, music, laughter, and dreams? Journey back to that remarkable era as we unlock the sights, sounds, and spirit that defined an extraordinary time. Let's rediscover what it truly meant to live in the 60s. When most folks think back on the 1960s, it's easy to picture the bright flashes of tie-dye, humming jukeboxes, and moon landings. But to truly understand what life was like in that unforgettable era, we have to step back to the beginning, the early days of the decade when America stood on the threshold of change and the world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something exciting to happen. As the clock struck midnight on January 1st, 1960, millions of Americans rang in the new year with a sense of optimism. The country had come through the hardship of World War II and the uncertainties of the 1950s, brimming with a confidence few eras could match. Suburbs were booming, cars stretched sleek and wide along the fresh-paved highways, and backyard barbecues brought neighbors together in a quiltwork of shared dreams. Did you ever gather around a charcoal grill or play kick the can until dusk settled in? For many, these moments painted the backdrop of a simpler, yet steadily changing world. Despite the wholesome image, the early 60s were brimming with contradiction. President Dwight D. Eisenhower was bidding farewell, making room for the youthful John F. Kennedy, and an era that would soon be defined by both hope and upheaval. Kennedy's New Frontier beckoned to young Americans, promising progress, civil rights, and even the conquest of outer space. It stirred memories of the frontier spirit gone by, calling upon the nation to dream bigger than before. In his inaugural speech, Kennedy challenged, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Those words echoed through living rooms from coast to coast, sparking ambition in young minds and a sense of unity across America. Yet daily life in 1960 was still grounded in routines passed down from the previous decade. Families dined together every night, TV was strictly rationed, and be home by dark was a universal rule for children in small towns and big cities alike. Main streets bustled with local shops, five and dimes, bakeries, soda fountains, places where everyone seemed to know your name. School days began with the Pledge of Allegiance, and class photos were snapped with film cameras whose flashbulbs popped and fizzled with every click. Ever hold one of those yearbook photos in your hands and feel the distant warmth of shared memories? But behind this facade of tradition, great shifts were already stirring. The Cold War hovered as a silent spectre. Schoolchildren practiced duck and cover drills, sliding under their desks at the sound of the bell, never quite sure whether it was a routine drill or something more sinister. Air raid sirens sliced the stillness, sometimes during family dinners or weekend outings. Did those drills ever make you pause for a moment, contemplating the wider world while daydreaming about Saturday matinees? Women were typically cast in the role of homemaker, fulfilling the archetype of the perfect post-war domestic life as seen on TV shows like Leave It to Beaver. Yet by the decade's end, women would be knocking forcefully on doors that had long been closed, clamoring for equality in the workplace and beyond. The seeds of the feminist movement were quietly planting themselves in book clubs, classrooms, and conversations over coffee. The early 60s also saw America's population grow rapidly. The famed baby boom was in full swing, and the number of school-aged children created jam-packed classrooms and bustling playgrounds. New schools popped up across suburbia, and teachers were often overwhelmed by class sizes few would tolerate today. If you ever sat in a classroom with 30, maybe even 40 other students, you remember how learning felt like a communal adventure. Meanwhile, the cultural landscape was shifting in subtle but impactful ways. The first wave of rock and roll had cracked open the radio airwaves in the 50s, but now a new generation, armed with transistor radios and cheap 45s, found their own voices, tastes, and heroes. Teenagers gathered at drive-ins and sock hops, sharing the latest dance craze or swapping stories over a shared milkshake. The music was more than just sound. It was the pulse of a nation looking for its own rhythm. Did you have a favorite tune that made you jump up to dance no matter where you were? Of course, outside the peaceful bubble of small-town America, the nation was wrestling with bigger questions. The civil rights movement was gaining momentum, gaining courage from each small victory. Lunch counter, sit-ins, freedom rides, and bold voices calling out for justice. These weren't distant headlines for everyone. Some watched from the street corners of Birmingham or the steps of Washington, D.C., witnessing history firsthand. Even in quiet communities, the topic of civil rights sparked lively and sometimes tense discussion around dinner tables. It was a time when ordinary people became extraordinary by standing up for what they believed in. Did you march, write letters, or simply watch the world shift from your front porch, wondering what would come next? The shadows of the Cold War touched every home, too. From the ever-present risk of nuclear fallout to the realities of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the fear and tension of international politics seeped into the lives of ordinary Americans. Fallout shelters were advertised in magazines and sometimes built in suburban basements, stocked with canned goods and flashlights, just in case. You might not believe this, but some families even held practice. Drills, timing themselves as they hurried from kitchen to bunker. Did your neighborhood have a shelter, or was it something whispered about after dark, like stories told around a campfire? Simultaneously, the early 60s were a time of growing prosperity for many. The GI Bill had opened doors to higher education and home ownership for millions of returning veterans, transforming entire neighborhoods and creating a sense of possibility. Shopping malls sprang up, changing the way people spent their weekends. Frozen dinners promised more family time, and the first credit cards made purchasing power feel limitless, if only for a little. While advertisement jingles worked their way into family routines, becoming the soundtrack of daily life. Do you still find yourself humming one now and then, maybe while making breakfast? Yet, even as Americans enjoyed the fruits of post-war progress, cracks were beginning to show in the veneer. The counterculture, then still nascent, was quietly gathering steam. Kids reading On the Road or discovering Bob Dylan and Joan Baez, questioning the path their parents had laid out. The seeds of rebellion were planted, even before anyone recognized just how much would change by 1970. Surprisingly, while many aspects of life in the early 60s seemed worlds away from today, rotary phones, handwritten letters, kids playing unsupervised until the streetlights flickered on, some concerns were uncannily familiar. Debates about screen time then referred to television, not smartphones. Political debates were heated, and worries about the environment were just starting to enter the public consciousness, as pollution in rivers and smog days in big cities hinted at bigger issues ahead. So as we look back at the historical roots of the 1960s, we recognize an America alive with promise, standing at a crossroads. A time of deep comfort and rapid change, of peaceful neighborhoods and distant fears, laughter over picnics and anxiety about the future. If you close your eyes, can you recall the hum of life back then? The school bells, the distant drone of a lawnmower, the gentle clack of typewriter keys echoing through a quiet afternoon? The foundation for all that followed in this memorable decade was being quietly laid, one moment, one conversation, one leap of faith at a time. But life in the 60s didn't remain anchored in tradition for long. As the years ticked by, incredible advancements, both technological and social, would truly transform the way Americans lived, worked, and dreamed. How did these changes take root, and what groundbreaking innovations made the ordinary extraordinary? Stay with us as we uncover the remarkable evolution that defined this landmark decade. As we reach the end of our journey through the 1960s, it's remarkable to look back on how one decade managed to weave together such a vivid tapestry of memory, meaning, and change. We started with those unmistakable sounds and scents, vinyl records spinning out the soundtrack of our youth, and the simple joy of an afternoon under the sun with friends. From there, we walked through the evolving landscape of American life, the powerful optimism of President Kennedy's new frontier, the strengthening heartbeat of civil rights and social change, and the ever-present hum of technological progress. With each shift, whether schoolchildren shuffling through crowded hallways, neighbors gathering for backyard cookouts, or families sitting in hushed awe before the flicker of a televised moon landing, the world seemed to open wider and the pace of life gathered momentum. Yet, if there's one thread that ties the era together, it's the sense of community that permeated daily living. In an age before instant messages and digital distractions, lasting connections were formed through face-to-face conversations, shared hardships, and small kindnesses. We leaned over backyard fences to chat, met for coffee at the local diner, and trusted our neighbors to keep an eye out for us. The world felt bigger, brimming with possibility, but also reassuringly smaller, a place where you belonged to something greater than yourself. Of course, not everything was as simple as it seemed. The shadow of the Cold War, the growing pains of social change, and the unending question of what lay just over the horizon lent a sense of gravity to even the most familiar rituals. At the same time, these challenges drew people closer, fostering resilience and a quiet hopefulness that touched every aspect of life. As technology crept into homes and workplaces, as music and fashion shifted, with the times, Americans, both young and old, faced the new with curiosity and courage, all while holding fast to cherished traditions. Looking at it now, the 60s seem both distant and ever-present, etched in black and white photographs, lingering in the lyrics of classic songs, and alive in the laughter of friends reminiscing about their first car or a summer twist contest. The world has changed in countless ways since then, but the feelings sparked by those memories remain. What stays with you from that time? Is it the sense of possibility, the togetherness, or one unforgettable moment that still brings a smile? Think back to what made life feel so full. Was it the comfort of routine, the thrill of change, or perhaps the knowledge that you were living in a time that would shape the future for your children and grandchildren? We'd love for you to share your favorite memories of the 1960s in the comments below. Was it a song, a family tradition, a turning point for your hometown, or simply the day-to-day sights and sounds that colored your life? Your stories can help keep the legacy of this extraordinary decade alive for generations to come. And if this walk down memory lane stirred something in you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more nostalgic reflections and journeys through the past. Bring a friend along too, perhaps someone who would appreciate a heartfelt look back at the years that shaped us all. Stay tuned for more stories and memories you won't want to miss. As the sun sets on our 1960s reminiscence, remember, Sometimes the smallest recollections, a familiar song playing on an old radio, or the laughter echoing down a summer street, hold the power to bring the past back to life. Thanks for joining us, and until our next nostalgic journey together, keep those cherished memories close and let the spirit of the 60s warm your heart.